A lot of people know Battle Angel Alita. The live-action adaptation was very successful despite all precedent, and I'm sure many anime viewers have seen the little OVA or at least heard the name. But nobody really seems to read or talk about the manga, despite the fact that it's still ongoing, and I wonder why that is. Alita herself is busy, so her clones have to stand in for her to fight in the Zenith of Things tournament against the Starship Cult, the troupe of evil killer clowns. After easily dealing with a sussy stereotype, Alita's two bratty clones make the mistake of playing Russian roulette against the fat hypnotist clown Cannibal Jack, 500 Magnum hollow point to the noggin. So Alita's transgender clone named Sex has to clutch out the round, even though he's just barely out of repairs from getting his shit rocked by the world's weakest childcare worker. We then flash back to the past, a fat homeless man living in garbage on a space station. He was raised under the protection of the badass fighting orphanage our heroes fought in the previous chapters. You see, in the future, children are illegal and can be hunted for sport. But he came of age and has been cast out on the street. The voice of God then speaks to him, and leads him to Space Skid Row and a clown with a MAC-10 bleeding out in an alley. He looked into the dying clown's eyes, and some revelation instantly blackpills and jokerfies him on the spot. Life is comedy, after all. Back in the present, the Russian roulette trick doesn't work on Sex. His skull is too hard and his brain is too small. But when he tries to cut down Cannibal Jack, the clown blocks by picking up his assistant by the ankles and using her as a sword. His hypnosis is so powerful that her body becomes stronger than steel when commanded to be a human sword. He attempts the same trick again, telling Alita's other clone, who he has hypnotized, that she is a human boomerang and throwing her at Sex. But after deflecting the missile, Sex comes up with a plan, and uses his android abilities to perfectly imitate the clown's voice, telling his assistant that she is human pudding. This causes her to instantly dissolve into jelly and die, at which point Sex cuts Jack to pieces. Now enters the true leader of the Starship Cult, Hufon? Cannibal Jack's former disciple, who was so powerful he took over the troupe. He brings a huge host of young women who all sing his praises. The daughters of powerful people from all over the solar system he has recruited into his cult. He's got some kind of Heaven's Gate by the way of helter-skelter thing going on, so when the authorities tell him he's violating the rules of the tournament by bringing too many combatants, all his groupies strap on a fresh pair of Nikes, draw their knives, and catch a ride on the next star. Sex grabs the knife from one of the girls, for what it's worth, but then he gets mad and just yeets her into the air and onto her head. But Sex hasn't gotten his power boost from thumb wrestling Yujiro Hanma yet, so he is kind of a little bitch, and Wolfon easily hypnotizes him into running in circles and stabbing himself in the chest. For his next trick, Hufon Nu Dis suggests to the entire audience that they have caught fire, and it's so convincing that it actually causes people to burst into flame. A Warframe character then comes up to the Buddha hacker martial arts man who really runs the show and explains how he created Wolfon by delving too deeply and too greedily into the dark depths of the human subconscious. As Sex kneels in the arena, his spine severed, beginning to burst into flame, he can use his Gomu Gomu fruit powers to attack one last time. But with Wolfon warping his vision, even Sex realizes that he cannot simply aim at him. He punches out in a random direction and completely donuts the cult leader. Apparently, the hypnosis didn't change the reflection in the steel of Sex weeaboo mallrat gloves. Another easy W for Team Alita. We then jump into a flashback arc of vampires on the frozen post-apocalyptic Earth for 2 entire volumes, which climaxes with a Chinese vampire fighting a dragon vampire on top of the St. Louis Arch. And we haven't even gotten to the giant penis monster, or the unbelievably sick soldier versus martial artist fights, or the Nazi zombies, or the orphan massacre, or the Puma. Basically what I'm saying is that Gangel Battle Galita is an awesomely insane roller coaster ride which has been going for 30 plus years and yet has nearly no footprint here in the West, despite the property itself actually being very well known. I think it's because the ending of the first series of the manga and the beginning of the second series, as well as the end of the second series and the beginning of the third series, are just weird and off-putting downers full of confusing dead ends and retcons. And the whiplash of the series suddenly changing gears into being like a wild and wonderful tournament arc for 70 chapters throws people off. But if this sounds interesting to you, you should probably read the series. It's a whole barrel of fun.
Ay, 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 ay.